Trench journals are going to be an invaluable resource to academics and also to students. I'm certainly going to be recommending that my students use them. The Trench journals are absolutely invaluable as a record of how soldiers wanted to communicate their experiences to each other. They show us the kind of balance of literature, of music, of humour, of documentary recording of day-to-day experiences.
ProQuest has published a brand new database called Trench Journals and Unit Magazines of the First World War. This is an extraordinary collection of rare and previously inaccessible magazines which were written by and for servicemen and women during the First World War. We've created this database by digitising the collections of world-renowned archives which hold this type of material, such as those of the Imperial War Museum and the British Library. Trench journals are magazines written by and for a particular unit, so it's that unit speaking to itself, about the things that matter most to it. They talk about their experiences, where they've been, what they're experiencing at that moment, and what their hopes for the future are. They would contain poetry, short stories, cartoons and illustrations, things that would have a sense of giving a historical value and of note to that unit, but also elements that were humorous, that would lighten the load, that would make the experiences of warfare for the common soldier just that little bit easier for the time that they were reading that magazine.
Trench journals are a fantastic collection, very varied in format, but they are in a way the voice of the soldiers of the First World War. They're unit magazines, is probably the better word. Produced by units of all sizes, whether or not that's a battalion, a regiment, an army, a squadron. But the main thing they have in common is that they were made up of contributions from serving soldiers. The thing they have in common is that they are all uplifting, I think is the point. They raise morale.
The Trench Journals and Unit magazines of the First World War contain the unheard voices of that conflict by the common soldier and servicemen and women. They've received less scholarly attention than they truly deserve, and that's largely due to their inaccessibility. They're rare and dispersed globally amongst a number of different libraries. ProQuest has preserved them by digitising them and also widened that access so that now scholars can search through them and make discoveries and really appreciate the real history of the People's War.
ProQuest approaches the digitisation of material like the Trench journals with the utmost respect and sensitivity, because clearly this material is very culturally significant, so it's extremely important that we make sure the material is properly conserved and maintained so that we can widen access for future generations. The images are captured in high quality scans, and the ultimate aim is to make an exact digital copy of that original document. We try and make sure that we capture every facet of that original document, so if there are loose inserts, for instance, or there are fold-out maps, then we absolutely want to capture those, because ultimately we want the user to feel as though they've got the original in front of them, and while at the same time being able to preserve that original document. The added value that ProQuest brings is really in the indexing. So if you're a specialist looking for different document types, for instance, you might be looking for editorials, illustrations, photographs, that sort of thing, then that's where the article level indexing comes in. There's also the OCR, which is in the background for the full text. You can search that as well. If you're a non-specialist and you want to search the content at the title level, then you can search for instance, magazines from Australian prisoners of war in Germany or American troop ships on their way to the Western Front.
Trench journals and unit magazines of the First World War will be hugely valuable in and of themselves, of course. Where the really exciting scholarly opportunities present themselves in is being able to hold the views of the servicemen and women against those other voices which have been more established and are more well known. The database is on the ProQuest platform, which means that users will be able to cross-search it with other resources such as the historical newspaper collections or British periodicals to get that military and civilian experience in one place and be able to contrast those two different perspectives.
I think what's going to be most exciting for me is the fact that for the first time I will be able to ask questions and answer them with some sense of authority of many journals. What did the soldiers talk about? What didn't they talk about? How did they talk about it? And I will be able to look at journals from different geographical places, different periods of the war, to extrapolate some sense of how soldiers responded to their experiences. It's wonderful now that we have for the first time these documents back in their rightful place, alongside soldiers' letters and diaries, as a very important testimony of soldiers' experiences of the First World War.
2014 is the centenary of the outbreak of the First World War, and we know that there's a huge amount of renewed interest in that conflict, both in popular culture and in the scholarly community. Trench journals and unit magazines of the First World War contain the hitherto unheard voices of literally hundreds of thousands of servicemen and women who were writing about their experiences at the time for each other. What's really exciting is that now we have the opportunity to appreciate and hear those voices for the first time and gain brand new perspectives on the First World War.